Hey everyone, my name is Amelia. I am a stand-up comedian, and with this channel I'd like to talk about some badasses throughout history that I would have really liked to have been friends with. To clarify, they would not have wanted to be my friend. So the person I'm going to talk about today is actually the reason I started this channel, and that is Julie d'Aubigny, also known as Mademoiselle Maupin, La Maupin, Emilie, Julie, and Julia. I did go to French school for 13 years just so I could pronounce these names perfectly. Was it worth the bullying? No. Actually, I think that's also the first time I've used French since graduating. I have been obsessed with Julie for ages, mostly because I aspire to do half of what she did, which was slaying left and right in more ways than one, and that's something I've always aspired to do. Commit murder. So some backstory. Julie was born in 1673, and her father was secretary to King Louis XIV's Master of Horse. Julie was an only child and grew up in Versailles, where she trained around the pages. She even dressed like a boy and learned to sword fight, which was unheard of at the time. She proved to be an incredibly talented swordsman, just like her father. Now eventually her and her father's employer, this guy, this fellow, right here, began an affair when Julie was 14. Eventually she became his main mistress. I hate calling a 14-year-old a mistress. For reference, here's me at 14.
Welcome to News at 7 on ACD.
But luckily when her father discovered the relationship, he put an end to it right away to protect her from his predatory behavior. Just kidding, it was to protect his reputation. He then decided that the best course of action, of course, was to marry her off to another old guy, Sire de Maupin, every 14-year-old girl's fantasy. Because of course, if there's a scandal that's going to arise in the family, the best thing to do is to distract people with wedding and booze. The day after they were married, her new husband was sent away to do an administration position, and that's it. That's how she escaped having sex with old guys. Just kidding. The affair blossomed once again with this is what he looks like, just to remind you. Him and a 14-year-old. As time went on, she got bored and she fell in love with her fencing instructor, Seyan. Together they ran away to Marseille, where they performed in taverns, dancing, singing, fencing, entertaining, and she continued to dress as a man. At one point, a spectator refused to believe Julie was anything but a man because she dueled too well, which was impossible for a woman to do, of course. To prove him wrong, she eloquently held her head high and flashed her tits. Although she continued to love fencing, history says that one of them fell out of love out of boredom. I have a feeling I know which one it was. So Julie parted ways from Seyan and continued to wander, perform, sing, fight. At one point she was challenged by, of course, and utterly defeated a man in a duel by stabbing him in the shoulder. The exact details of how this came about are unclear, but supposedly the next day she went to check on him. She decided to nurse him back to health with sex. I was just amazed that she's able to wound a man so severely and still get laid. I can't even get a date. Julie being Julie, she didn't dwell on this Louis Joseph guy and continued to travel doing her own thing, of course, until she wandered into what would become her most infamous and sexy tale. Julie and a local merchant's daughter met, fell deeply in love, and publicly acknowledged that love. Also, can I say, I know it was a different time, but Julie has been in love like 6 times so far, and I think she's like 18. When the merchant discovered that his daughter was gay, he sent her to a local convent. A brilliant solution to keeping your queer daughter away from having sex with women is to send them to a place where there are only women. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish my parents had done that to me when I came out. Instead, they just said that they love and support me or something. Ugh. But this is Julie, and that was not gonna stop her. Julie decided to take the vows to become a nun, which were incredibly serious, and stuck into her girlfriend's room at night, placed the body of a recently deceased nun there, and set the entire convent on fire to cover her tracks. It was the perfect plan until she got caught and was sentenced to death by fire, which is kind of cute. They addressed her as Monsieur throughout the trial, partly to spare the girl's family the shame that came with having a daughter, because arson is really bad, but being gay is worse. However, Julie managed to get a full pardon because at the time the laws were written for men, and she's a woman.
No man can kill me.
I am no man.
And because women would be completely incapable of doing such things. So she got out. Although her love didn't last, even though it should have, because that story is amazing, she found a new love. Singing. A lot less drama, I will say. She moved to Paris and learned under Maréchal, a famous opera singer of the time, until he turned out to have a raging alcohol addiction and she left. So thank you, next. And she turned to another opera singer as a teacher slash lover. Gotta have both. His name was Gabriel Vincent. I'm not gonna say his last name because I'm gonna butcher it and I'm already really embarrassed about my accent. He really helped advance her career in opera. And upon auditioning for the Paris Opera, she was immediately hired, which actually helped her get out of a death sentence for murdering and wounding a few people. When I say few, I mean about a dozen. Many people claim that she had one of the most beautiful voices in the world, and upon the king hearing it, he decided that that was a voice worth saving. Had I been in her place, I would be probably executed. Her reputation at the Paris Opera grew and grew, and critics loved her, audience members loved her, her fellow lovers, fellow actors loved her, although she did reject one actor's advances, and as a result, he called her a sling of slurs. It's weirdly comforting to know that incels have always existed. After he mercilessly insulted her, he challenged her to a duel. Everyone said, "Julie, just let it go." She did not get famous for letting things go. One night, as he was leaving the theater, she waited for him so she could beat him to a pulp and steal his watch. The next day, he told everyone at this theater that a gang of thugs came and beat him up and he fought back, but they stole his watch. At which point, Julie took out and presented his watch. He was, of course, laughed off the stage and out of the theater. But this became a common thing for Julie to do, to take artifacts from the men she had beaten, since they refused to admit she had beaten them. Eventually, you know, she stabbed some more people and had to flee Paris. And one night she, of course, ended up at King Louis XIV's brother's ball, at which she cross-dressed as a man and wooed a woman, and then proceeded to make out with her on the dance floor. She was immediately challenged by 3 men. She took them outside and killed them all. At this point, honor dueling was punishable by death, so once again, in a very Julie manner, she had to flee. I'm gonna do a flee count. What am I at? Of course, royal authority took her fleeing as a threat, but she ended up in Brussels and became the lover of Elector of Barras. Elector de Barras. If I say it with a strong enough accent, none of you will know that I'm saying it completely wrong. So her and the Elector de Barras ended up as lovers. That lasted several weeks before he offered her 40,000 francs to please leave. She graciously accepted and then threw the money at his groin and fled to Madrid. I think I've gotten about 50% redder in the face since starting this video because my room's about 40 degrees. That, or I'm just like turned on by Julie's life. She found work as a lady's maid to Countess Marino. I did go to French school for 13 years, but I did not go to Italian school for 13 years, so give me a break. Now, for probably the first time in Julie's entire life, her employer ended up hating her and not fucking her. You know what? We don't know for sure if they didn't fuck. Maybe they did. Maybe they did. But yeah, they ended up hating each other. And after she was fired, she snuck into the Countess's room and tied radishes into her hair. Oh, and then at one point, Julie also threatened to shoot her. But that's probably why she fired her. Life came full circle for Julie when eventually she did reunite with her husband. He eventually died of natural causes in 1707. But shortly after, she met Madame la Marquise de Florensac, also known as the most beautiful woman in the world, because of course Julie is going to end up with the most beautiful woman in the world. They fell deeply in love and bliss and happiness, but unfortunately it was only for a short while because Madame Florensac died at 33 from fever. This was also, not including her marriage, one of Julie's longest relationships, which was 2 years. Julie eventually returned to the convent, this time taking vows that she took a little bit more seriously, but died at 33. The exact cause is not known, but I'm romantic. I like to believe that it was broken heart. Either way, she lived an incredibly full life that was cut way too short, and she is now and forever known as a bi icon and my personal muse and inspiration. Julie was this week's badass, but I will be covering many more. If there's anyone you want to hear about, please let me know. I really don't know how I'm going to top Julie. As I'm saying that, I'm realizing how it sounds. In my lifetime, I would love to accomplish even a quarter of some of the great things she's done, which means murdering 3 people.